Five.
Yeah.
Five.
Yeah.
Five. You just use your hands now.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. What's this paper? Paper plates.
Is that a white?
But the other ones.
But doesn't white have like water or something?
But there's like holes in it, so it's still gonna float.
Yes.
All right, so today we're gonna do addition and subtraction of integers.
I think I got a 9 once.
That's a
Yay.
good thing.
I'm not onto this so
All right, so the first one, addition of integers, lesson 15. We have this vocab, so we're gonna go over it. Okay. The only one. Zero pair. What is zero pair? No,
A positive number which is negative, which makes it 0.
equals zero. So what's another way of saying that? A number and its
When you add two numbers and you get zero.
what-
And it's opposite?
And its opposite, yes, be specific. So a number and its opposite, meaning, for example, -4, right? What's its opposite?
4.
So if I add its opposite, I get what? 0.
Basically, it's
Yeah, it's
So
like
in other words, so the sum of a number
there's also
and its opposite is 0, then you have a zero pair.
I remember in one of the rules in this lesson, which is to add 2 integers that have the same sign, find the same of the absolute values of the items and keep the sign.
We'll do that first. All right, so the first rule when you're adding integers. So, addition of integers.
I'm going to use this if you don't see. What are you gonna say? I think we can add 7.
All right, first rule, when you're adding two integers with the same sign, right?
Isn't it the opposite?
What is it? Oh, we'll get to that. 0 is when it's opposite, but the first rule we're gonna do is when they're the same. So when you add two integers with the same sign, add the absolute values of those numbers and then keep the sign that they both have, right? So add the absolute value and keep the sign.
So I eat KFC.
Or is this KFC stuff?
No,
Well, that's for the
KFC.
subtraction. All right, so if I'm adding, give me two positive numbers,
4 and 5.
4 and 6.
Ah.
So 4 plus 6, right? They both have the same sign. They're both what?
5.
The absolute value of 4 is
Negative
4.
4. Remember, absolute value is just the distance.
5.
Absolute value of 6 is,
6.
if you add them, you get,
10.
and then they were both positive, right?
Yeah.
The final answer is positive.
Negative 10.
Now, what if they were both negative? Give me two negative numbers.
Negative 1.
What?
7 and 8.
So -7 and then someone else.
Negative 1.
-1.
Yeah.
So if I do -7 plus 1, plus -1, my bad. The rule says add the absolute value. What's the absolute value of -7?
7.
What's the absolute value of -1?
1.
7 plus 1,
8.
8.
Okay.
So in my answer, it doesn't show. So in my answer, both signs are negative, so the final answer has to be,
Negative. Positive. Sorry.
so you're gonna keep the sign, remember?
I
So negative, negative, final answer is negative.
saw a negative part.
And what number did we get?
Negative 8.
Or what number?
8.
8.
subtract.
Right, so don't get
So
confused
yeah,
with,
negative.
yes, don't get confused with multiplication. In multiplication, negative times negative is what?
Or positive.
I know the subtraction part.
But when you add negative plus negative,
Yeah.
It's a negative.
it's negative, yes, because.
Wait, so what? Wait, so what?
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 Negative plus a negative is good, it's still negative. So if you think about it, if you're at -2, right? Adding another negative number means we're going what direction?
Left.
The left. The lefts are what numbers?
Negative.
Negative. So if you add another negative, you're still in the negative. You're still on the left side. So let's do another one.
So negative plus negative? So negative.
Still negative.
But when you get to the subtraction part,
Then
that's a
it's
whole
different,
different.
yes. All right, let's do another same signs.
Okay.
Give me two negative numbers.
2,
7,
Five.
5.
Five.
So -7 plus -5.
And do
Rule says we
Not good.
Keep the signs.
keep the
signs,
signs.
what I
The answer is what?
13,
Oh,
12. Negative 12.
obviously that's negative 12.
So
So
again, absolute value of -7 is
7.
7.
Yeah, but
Absolute value of -5 is
fine.
5.
Nico,
Just simple. Have you ever heard of quadrillion?
Hmm?
Quadrillion.
The number,
Yes.
No.
Wow. It's hard to.
All right, so 7 plus 5 is 12.
Um,
And both signs were
negative,
negative, so final answer.
negative 12.
negative 12.
there's wow, it's really good.
Good again.
The addition part is so simple. I don't know how I got it right.
Okay.
What is that? Oh,
All right, now we're gonna add two integers with different signs.
Yay. I think I already know.
All right, so rule
Number 2.
number 2.
Yay.
All right, so when you add one positive and one negative number, you're going to subtract the absolute values and then keep the sign of the larger absolute value. Okay, so you're going to subtract the absolute values and then keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. So keep sign of bigger absolute value. All right, so now what does that mean, right? Give me a positive number.
5.
4.
What is it?
6.
6.
I said 5 first.
Give me a negative number.
7.
What is it?
negative
You're giving me multiple. So if I'm adding this, I have 6 plus -4, right?
Yes. Very
First
good.
thing I have to do,
Absolute value.
absolute values. What's the absolute value of 6?
6.
Absolute value of -4.
4.
Then I do what?
Plus.
Subtract the
I subtract them. So I'm subtracting 6 and 4. 6 minus 4
Two.
is 2. Then I keep the sign of the,
biggest,
The bigger absolute value.
what was the bigger absolute value?
6.
6.
And that number was what?
Positive.
So my answer is
Positive.
positive 2. So when we did the 6 minus 4, 2 is going to be a part of our answer. The absolute value, greater absolute value was 6, and 6 was originally positive.
Definitely.
So my answer is positive 2.
Definitely.
Let's do another one. What if I have -7 plus 7? Raise your hand. What's my answer?
0.
0.
0. Why? 7. Why is it 0?
Seven.
No. What is it?
Zero.
It's a 0 pair. 7 and its opposite cancel out. All right, let's do another one.
Why is it so
Excuse
easy?
me.
If this is so easy, why can't we get this in unit 1?
It's not that
There
easy.
were things, stuff that led to this.
Pretty easy.
It is. All right, so we have 5 plus negative 12. 5 plus negative 12. We have positive plus negative, right?
Yes, very likely.
What do we find first?
It's negative 17.
Absolute value of
Absolute value. Absolute value of 5,
5,
absolute value of negative 12.
12,
What do I do with these numbers?
subtract,
I'm subtracting,
absolute value.
oh, give me the expression.
5 by 12.
5 minus 12 equals
Not 5 minus 12.
12 minus 5.
12 minus 5.
Woo!
All right, so you're gonna subtract the bigger one from the smaller one from the bigger one. So 12 minus 5, that gives you 7. What was the bigger absolute value?
Negative 12. So it's gonna be
The
negative.
bigger absolute value
Ah!
was 12. And 12 was originally
Negative.
Negative.
negative. So my
It's
answer is
Negative. 7.
negative 7, yes.
Okay.
All right, so any questions on adding different integers or different signs?
No, it's something we need to do the subtraction.
All right, so let's do a word problem to finish this.
Is there any writers in this?
I
No,
don't
no,
think
no.
so.
No?
Oh, before we do the word problem,
Yay!
there are times where you're gonna have multiple integers in one expression. For example, 6 plus negative 8 plus negative 6, right? When you have multiple integers in an expression, you just follow the order of operations, right? Break it
Yes.
down by following the order of operations.
Yes,
What's the first?
parentheses. And I fell.
I think this is a question. That's
Yeah, it
the
is.
problem.
Or, oh, I believe it's a question. Yeah, it's a question. So there are parentheses, but is there anything happening in the parentheses?
No.
No, it's just used to separate the negative. Right? So what do I do first?
Plus. Absolute value.
No, like what
Add.
am I gonna do first? Adding what?
6 plus 8.
So we're gonna do
6
this
plus
first.
negative 8.
Ah!
Because remember, order of operations, left to right, we add, right? So for 6 plus negative 8, how do I add these?
Doesn't the negative make it 6 minus 8?
8 minus
You don't have to
plus.
do that.
What?
We're in the
Yeah.
addition one. Hector.
Absolute value?
Absolute value. Absolute value of 6.
What I meant like the normal way of doing it.
Oh yeah, you could change this to a minus, but then you just do 6 minus 8.
Which would be negative 2.
Like there's
Alright.
multiple ways of doing it. You could change the
Negative.
plus and minus to minus, or you can do the absolute value way.
Negative.
Is there people on there?
Yes. All right, so absolute value of 6. No,
That's
Really, Hector?
no.
It's 6. Why you leaving this?
All right, no. All right, in between, you guys shouldn't be talking to each other like that. So either when you raise your hand and I call on you, or just silence. Absolute value of negative 8.
8,
Sergio.
8.
All right, what do I do with these numbers, Ashram?
how do you do it? Add it,
I'm not adding,
subtract
subtract it. How am I subtracting it?
8 and 6.
8 minus 6. 8 minus 6. This gives you, no,
2.
2. What do I have to look at next? Sergio,
Negative 6.
the what?
Negative 6. Absolute value.
Hector,
Which absolute value is greater?
which absolute value is greater, and that would be what?
Negative
The negative 8. So my final answer has to be negative. So 6 plus negative 8 is what?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. All Right, so this part's -2. I'm gonna drop down the next part,
Right.
plus -6. How do I add these? Hector?
By doing the absolute values,
Mhm.
then you add them, right?
Yeah, correct. Absolute value of -2,
So
Two.
absolute value of -6, 6 plus 2,
8,
8. And my final answer has to be, no, -8. Why am I making a negative? Sergio,
Because the larger number is 6 and it's negative.
well, that's one way of saying it. What's another way?
Then you have to be
The,
wild.
the larger number is -6, right? But,
because they're both negative.
because they're both negative,
Oh,
yes, it's a
eight.
difference. For this one, larger number, there were different signs for the 6 and 8, right?
Mhm.
It was -8, +6, so we kept the bigger sign, which was with the 8, right? But here, they're both negative, so for sure, when I add them, it's negative.
Really nice, they have the same sign.
All right, so this whole problem now equals
Negative 8.
-8. Now, this problem was actually comparing. On the other side, we have 4 plus -8. What's that give you?
-12,
How would you find the answer?
absolute value.
But the absolute, find the absolute value and subtract,
So absolute value of 4,
or
4, absolute value of -8, 8. Oh, equal. And then what do I have to do next? No.
Add them, which makes it
Opposite.
subtract.
Subtract them. How am I subtracting it? Sergio.
8 minus 4.
8 minus 4. That gives you no.
Or
My final answer is going to be
-4,
no. Why?
because 8 is a bigger number, and it's a negative.
Yes. So we keep the sign of the bigger absolute value that was -8. All right, now between these two problems, we got -8 for this one, -4 for this one, which is the, or how would you compare them? Are they equal, or is one bigger?
one's greater,
Which one's bigger?
4 plus -8.
Yes. So this one is bigger. Yeah, it's greater than this problem we have up here. So that -4 is greater than that -8. All right, now word problem. So for the word problem, we're starting with $34 in your checking account.
How many? 34?
$34, this is your balance. We're gonna write a check for $76.
Wow,
This
this
is to
is
buy-
This is the one I got wrong. We said that 3 times.
Or groceries, sorry, this is for groceries.
Sure, we got 3 wrong.
Right now, after you make that check for $76, you deposit $30 into your bank. You deposit $30.
You still doesn't have enough.
Good observation, yes.
Ah,
All right, so before we start, tell me what the values are for these numbers. 34 would be. Sergio,
34.
what can you tell me about that 34?
Positive.
It's positive. 76 would be Hector.
Negative,
Negative. Why is it negative?
because you're taking it out.
You took it out.
Good job.
30 would be Sergio.
Positive.
Positive. Why?
Because you're putting it into your checking account.
Yes, you put it into your checking account. All right, now I want to know what the new balance is. So what do I do with these numbers?
Add.
Add them up. Yes.
Yes.
So we have that positive 34 plus that negative 76
Mhm.
plus that positive 30. No,
In my lesson, I put -8
-12.
Okay.
That's,
So let's go ahead and follow the order of operations. What do I do first? No,
Absolute count with 34 is 76.
absolute value 34,
34.
34. Absolute value of -76,
76.
76. What do I do with these numbers?
Subtract.
You
Add,
subtract them.
well,
Oh, I put 36, my bad. Absolute value is 34 is 34. Absolute value of -76,
this is
76. And then what do I do with those numbers?
Subtract.
Subtract them. All right, so I'm going to subtract what?
76 minus 30.
So 76 minus 34, that gives you,
42.
what is it?
42.
So you need a calculator.
And then final answer is going to be
-42.
y.
Is the 76 is greater than 34.
So now I have -42 plus the 30 that we didn't use, so plus 30. How do I add these numbers?
You have to find out the value. You get there,
Absolute value, yes. Absolute value of -42.
42.
Oh, markers are running out.
Yep.
All right, 42. Absolute value of 30,
30.
30. What do you do with these numbers, Noah? Subtract them. How are we subtracting them?
42 minus 30.
So 42 minus 30, that gives you
62.
minus
12.
12.
Minus.
And the final answer,
Negative.
why is it -12?
Because 42 is larger and it's negative.
Exactly.
So what to subtract 42 by 30 because 42 is bigger.
Yeah,
Let's put 30 first.
All right, so that's it for adding integers. Any questions on how we did those?
No. It's not pretty easy, just.
All right, so now we're gonna do subtraction of integers.
I just want to see this. I just don't see this here.
Well,
All right, now when you, it's,
What about multiplying and dividing?
oh, that'd be the next two. All right, so, yes.
Oh, just oh,
All right, so here's something to think about. When you subtract a negative number, I'm saying no. When you subtract a positive number, my bad, it's the same as adding a negative. So subtracting,
Is this a rule?
a positive, yeah, well, not a rule, more like a statement. Right?
Statement.
Subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative. Now, what does that mean, right? Say I have 8, and I want to subtract a positive number 3, right? If I subtract positive 3, it's 8 minus 3,
Mhm.
right? But say I have 8 again, but this time I'm gonna add a negative 3
Okay.
plus negative 3, right? Let's solve both of these. Let's see what happens. So the first one, subtracting a positive. 8 minus 3 is
Negative 5.
8 minus 3, 6.
Oh,
No.
No,
5.
5. My bad.
No.
So
Why did you
8
put
minus
6
3 is 5, right?
Then
But what about 8 plus negative 3?
5.
How do you do it?
Because you make the both signs into a subtraction problem.
Or,
I didn't understand what you just said, but.
It's the absolute value, remember,
Yeah.
he's in mental math.
so here, this part where the plus and the minus, you can change to minus, that has to do with the next two lessons where you can multiply those, right? And another way to think about it is absolute value that we were doing before, right? Absolute value of 8 is 8.
Mhm.
Absolute value of 3, -3 is,
Three,
and then what do you do with these numbers?
subtract.
Notice that it's the same as the first one, right?
Yeah.
8 minus 3 is,
5.
the bigger absolute value
Mhm.
is what?
Negative, I mean, 8.
8. 8
Positive.
was positive. So we get positive 5. So when you add a negative number,
Okay, so that's.
if you think about the direction you have to go, adding a negative number, where do you go?
So what?
To the left. So it's the same as subtracting a positive number. And now what if you're doing
The
the
opposite.
opposite?
Hey.
Subtracting a negative number. Right, so let's say we're doing subtracting a negative number. So subtracting a negative number is going to be the same as what? What do you think?
It's going to be the same as adding a positive number.
Adding a positive. So you just put
Basically, sir, you want to say that? Because it's something.
Yeah,
same as
that's exactly what it is.
adding a
Exactly.
positive. All right, now let's see why that's true, right? So subtracting a negative number. Give me a negative number to subtract.
5.
5. So I'm gonna do -5. I'm gonna subtract it from, give me another number.
7.
7. So 7 minus -5, right? And then they said it's the same as adding the positive, right? So here 7 plus 5.
Yep.
All right, so 7 minus a -5. What happens when you subtract a negative?
You go down.
So this is one of the rules of the lesson. When you're subtracting integers, you use this rule. It's called, it's like they use an acronym for it. It's the K, was it CF or FC?
KCF.
K, what is it?
KFC.
KC.
KFC. Okay.
KFC.
What is that? Is that an H?
It's okay. It's how I draw my K's.
Oh, okay.
There's another K though.
There you go. All
Yeah.
right, so K, it stands for keep. We're going to keep the first number. So we're going to keep the 7. It's going to stay like that. So 7. Next, you're going to flip.
Keep, flip, and
You're going to flip the minus into,
positive. Add.
no one.
Ah.
Flip the minus into a positive. So it goes from minus to plus. And then you're going to change the second number. Change how? -5 goes to what?
Positive 5.
Positive 5,
Positivo.
right? So if you look at the first problem and what we changed it into, do you see what happened?
Yes,
It became the same problem, right? 7 plus 5
because it is the same problem.
is the same. So adding or subtracting a negative is the same as just adding the positive, right?
Yep.
7 minus -5 is the same as 7 plus 5. All right, so let's do some problems. All right, so I want the difference between -18 and 15. The difference between -18 and 15. All right, so the difference be -18 and 15. What does that mean?
Hmm?
If I want the difference between them, what do I have to do?
Subtract.
Subtract, right? So -18 minus 15.
Is that 5?
It's 5.
No, the other one. Is that an 8?
This one, it's an 8.
Okay.
Following the KFC rule,
I
right?
see that.
How do
I know
I-
like my 8.
Change this problem.
What?
Following KFC, keep flip change.
Mhm.
How do I change this problem?
Turn the 18 into.
Keep the 18,
Keep
make
negative
it,
18.
make the negative positive,
Make the negative a positive.
and then change the 15 to a negative.
Change 15 to negative.
You interrupted my sentence.
It is now, it is now -18 plus -15. Right? When we're adding two negatives, what happens?
You just add them and keep the sign.
Just add and keep the sign. What's the sign gonna be for our answer?
Negative.
Negative. 18 plus 15.
33.
33.
Then let me finish. I was gonna say 3 with another 3. Okay, let me finish.
Alright, so 18. So that means -18 minus 15 is what?
33. Negative 33.
-33.
Okay.
Alright, so next one.
Look at this chat.
Uh-oh.
Next one. This time we're gonna have multiple integers that we're going to subtract. We have -9 minus 6 minus -8.
Negative 6. Minus 6.
Or just -6, and then minus -8. Or how do I subtract these? You know this.
Keep the number 9.
What about it?
Now.
What about the -9?
Negative 9 minus 6.
Oh, we're gonna do that first, right?
Yes.
Wait, what'd you say, Sergio?
You keep the 9?
Keep the -9. So -9
Change the negative to a positive.
plus
Make the 6 a negative.
6 negative. We got -9 plus -6 first.
Since they're both negative, add and keep the symbol.
Keep the symbol, yes. So
Making it
9 plus
negative
6?
15.
Negative. All right, now from here, what do we do?
Negative 15 minus negative 8,
Very likely.
which is, since they both have the same symbol, you add and keep the symbol. Oh wait, subtracting.
Yeah,
You
subtract
have to
this,
add.
that's different. Hold on, let me move this. -15 minus -8.
Meaning you could do the KFC thing.
Yes, KFC.
So we have
KFC lol.
Keep.
negative
Keep the 15. Then you
Make
put
the
the
negative and make the 8 negative. Make the negative 8.
Ooh.
And they comment, yes. So keep, change, and then no, flip, and then change. So now we're adding a positive and a negative. What was the rule for that?
When you're adding the
The absolute
positive and the
value.
negative, it's gonna be positive.
Right, no, absolute values, yes. Absolute value of -15.
15.
Absolute value of 8.
8.
What do I do with these numbers?
Subtract.
Subtract them.
8 plus 7. Huh?
All right, so how am I subtracting it?
15 minus 8.
15 minus 8, that gives you
7.
7.
You did not raise your hand.
All right, now, for my final answer, what do I have to look at?
The symbol.
Of what?
15.
Put it
Put it to large.
The highest absolute value.
Which is,
Negative 15.
yes, -15. So my answer is going to be
Negative.
Negative 7.
7.
I still just gonna be negative.
I am
All right, so -9 minus 6 minus -8 is equal to
-7.
-7.
Why am I the one that always gets this work right?
All right, so any questions on how to subtract with these integers?
Nope, they're simple.
All right, so now let's do a word problem. Let's put it into context. All right, so what is the change in elevation from 134 feet below sea level
That's negative,
to 29 feet above sea level?
that's positive.
So we have, let me write it out, we have 134 feet below sea level,
Below, okay, that's negative.
and that's what?
Negative.
Negative. Then we
Yay.
have 29 feet above sea level.
Are we going to absolute, find the absolute value of each number?
Or it depends on what the problem tells us to do.
We're just gonna solve it with when.
Oh!
All right, I want the difference between these elevations. Or what is, not the difference, I want the change in elevation. I want the change in elevation.
Above sea level and below sea level.
What is it?
That one to one below sea level and 29 feet is above sea level. Okay.
All right, so I want the change in elevation.
Yeah.
How do we change?
Subtract.
How
All
do
you
we
have to do
change?
is
Noah, or what's, give me the expression first. What am I doing?
Negative 134,
Yes,
100, negative 134 minus, wait, this is wrong. 29,
here goes.
in absolute value bars, 134, -134 plus 129.
Why that way?
Because you don't,
half.
when you're finding when you're finding how tall a building is from the
Yeah,
sea
use your-
level,
Let him-
from the sea level, you don't say, it's negative number because I added with a negative.
What?
All right, here's, let me explain what he was saying, but like in a different way.
It's
So-
not.
Let me see if I got what you meant. So say I wanted to find someone's age, right? They're born in 2005,
Today is 2020.
and now it's 2020, right?
Yeah,
If I wanted to know the change in years,
15 years.
how would you find that? What's it do?
Subtraction.
How did you subtract?
I just subtracted 2020 to 2005.
So you did 2020 minus 2005, right?
Yep.
In
Very
other
nice.
words, you subtracted the end from the start.
Yep. Very
Right.
likely.
Happy
So it's the end minus the start.
Yep.
So if I want to know, was that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So if I want to know the change in elevation, how am I gonna subtract it? Sergio,
Subtraction.
yeah, how? What am I subtracting?
130, negative 134 and 29.
How am I subtracting it? Remember, we started with negative 134 feet. It was below sea level. We ended up at 29 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
No other.
in absolute value.
1.29.
I got the answer though,
But it's important how.
which I believe is right.
29 minus 134.
There we go, 29 minus negative 134. Because remember, the example that I gave you, right?
Yes.
To subtract the ages, you started with 2020,
Oh.
the end, and then you
Okay, now
subtracted
I
the
get
start. Yes, we ended at 29 feet, and we're gonna subtract what we started with, negative
Right.
134, right? So now from here, all right, we got a positive minus a negative, right?
Yep.
That's the same as
Adding
adding the,
both numbers.
remember, subtracting a negative
KFC.
is the same as
Adding the numbers.
adding the,
Negative.
Opposite of the 134,
yes.
which is 134.
In other words, it's,
163.
Because you're fair.
And her head.
in other words, it's positive. Remember,
Ah,
subtracting
yes.
the negative is the same as adding.
Oh.
Or we could do KFC. If you don't remember that, just remember KFC.
Yeah, I would just think Kentucky Fried Chicken door.
Okay, so keep what?
29,
Change,
negative to a positive.
and then, oh, I'm sorry, flip the negative to positive, and then change
A 134
To bother?
to a
to
positive.
positive.
So now I'm adding these numbers, 29 plus 134.
116 at 30.
Not 163.
What?
It's 163.
That's
63 what?
Negative?
feet above sea
Feet.
level.
There we go. So you have to remember the unit. I didn't put those in. So 29 feet plus that 134 feet, 160, oh my bad, 163 feet.
Yes.
All right, so the last word problem we're gonna do.
Exactly what I had.
All right, so we have a company.
That's exactly what I had. I had 166.
All right, so listen up. We have a company. Their monthly profit is 6,400. This is the profit. Or in other words, this is their gain. Right? They had a loss of 4,700. Loss. I want to know the difference in profit between the 2 months. Yes. What is the difference in profit between the 2 months? What is the difference in profit between the 2 months? So 1 month they had a profit of 6,400.
Yes.
And then the next month they had a loss of 4,700.
Yes.
What is the difference in profit?
Gotta find the number.
How? How do I find that?
Subtract.
KFC.
We're gonna subtract. How am
KFC.
I gonna subtract it?
KFC.
Before we get to that, how do we subtract it?
60,
Hector?
6,400 minus negative
Other way around.
4,700.
Other way around.
Wait, this is negative?
Yes.
Yes, it's
lost
negative.
that.
But remember the problem we did before where we found the change in elevation?
Yes.
How did we subtract that, Sergio?
4,700 minus 6,400.
Yes, in other words, it's the
Opposite.
And
end minus
version.
the minus start.
start.
Yeah, that.
Right,
Either
so
way,
to
say
find
that
that
right.
change, to find the change,
KFC.
right? So the end was what?
Negative
Negative.
4,700.
And then the start,
6,400.
so negative 4,700 minus 6,400. How can I change this?
Okay.
KFC.
Ah,
Keep
4,700.
negative.
You
Okay.
change the negative.
Flip.
Flip
You
it to,
flip it, you don't change it.
yeah. So like, it's just holding it like this.
Negative to positive.
It's pretty much the same, right?
Same thing.
And then what do we change?
The negative, the positive to the
6,400.
negative.
A positive to a negative. And it's the 6,400, right?
Yep.
So now we're actually just adding these numbers.
Yep.
Yes.
They're both negative, so when we add, we get a
Negative.
negative number. So it's like equals.
I got it.
What is it?
Isn't it?
Oh, you don't actually have to add them though. The problem one is the expression. This is the
You
expression.
make me do all this looking at it. Okay.
All right, so that's all we're gonna do today. That's all we're gonna do today. Tomorrow we'll do the multiplying and dividing integers.
Tomorrow is Friday.
Oh, I'm sorry, next week.
Oh,
Next week we'll do the
Next
multiplying and dividing.
oops.
All right, so that is it for today's Zoom class.
So we're gonna find the end.